The Persian army moves like a living shadow across the plains of Boeotia. Thousands of men, 10,000 spears, and a god-king who believes the earth bends beneath him. Ahead lie a handful of Greeks, thirsty, outnumbered, abandoned, and yet unbroken. They do not flee. They do not beg. They stand. And in that silence, the fate of an empire begins to tremble. Stay with us till the end for valuable insights. Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. The wind whispered through the olive trees, carrying with it the distant sounds of an empire on the move. On the open plains of Boeotia, the ground trembled beneath the hooves of tens of thousands of Persian horses. Their armor glinted in the harsh sunlight, a river of bronze and gold stretching farther than the eye could see. At the center rode Mardonius, the commander of this unstoppable force, confident in his destiny. To him, victory was not a question, it was assumed. The Greeks, he thought, would crumble under the weight of his numbers and the fury of his army. But the Greeks were not ready to break. Across the plains, the Spartan soldiers, hardened by a lifetime of discipline, stood in formation. They were fewer than 1,000 men at the center, yet each one carried the weight of an unbroken legacy. They remembered Thermopylae, the sacrifice of Leonidas, and the fiery oath of vengeance that still burned in every Spartan heart. These were men who had been trained from childhood to fight without hesitation, to see fear as a tool and death as a possibility, but never as an excuse. The air was thick with tension. Every breath felt heavy, as if the sky itself were holding its judgment. Persian scouts circled the hills, their eyes sharp for any movement, any sign that the Greek lines might falter. And yet, in the shadows, the Greeks moved with a quiet purpose. Orders passed down in low, deliberate tones. Spears were adjusted, shields checked, and eyes scanned the horizon for any sign of weakness in the approaching storm. Even as the sun sank behind the hills, the odds were impossible. The Persian army was vast, a sea of disciplined warriors with cavalry that could outrun and outflank any infantry. Yet the Spartans did not flinch. Around them, other Greek contingents, Athenians, Tegeans, Corinthians, prepared as well, though their nerves were raw and their formations less steady. They knew the ground was treacherous. They knew thirst and hunger gnawed at their bodies. And they knew that one misstep could turn their disciplined resistance into chaos. In the center, Pausanias, the Spartan regent, moved among his men. His presence was steady, a quiet flame in the growing darkness. He spoke to no one loudly, no commands shouted across the ranks. Instead, he touched shoulders, offered short instructions, and watched carefully as each man adjusted to the tension. Somewhere deep inside, he carried the knowledge that this moment would define not only the battle but the very fate of Greece. Night approached, and with it, the whispers of the wind became warnings. The Persian army would strike with the dawn, seeking to crush the Greeks before they could organize. The Spartans, however, were ready, not just with weapons, but with resolve. They were ready to fight, to endure, and to punish an empire that had dared to destroy their homes, desecrate their temples, and take their king. Every man in the formation knew that survival would be difficult, that victory was uncertain, but surrender was not an option. The stage was set. The shadows deepened, cloaking the plain. And somewhere in the distance, the first notes of battle began to stir, not from the clash of weapons, but from the tension of men waiting for the right moment to strike, for the gods to approve, and for history itself to hold its breath. Darkness had fallen like a heavy curtain over the Greek lines. The sun's final glow vanished behind the hills, leaving only a dim twilight to outline the warriors' forms. The Spartans were not alone. Athenians, Corinthians, Tegeans, and other allies waited in tense silence, their breath visible in the cold night air. Every movement had to be measured. Every sound could betray them. Even the rustling of cloth against armor or the clink of metal had to be muffled. Survival required patience, precision, and nerve. Orders traveled down the ranks in whispers, officer to officer, hand to hand. No torches, unless absolutely necessary. No shouted commands. Equipment was secured, straps tightened, and loose metal wrapped to prevent any inadvertent noise. Some men felt a small relief that at last they were moving, leaving the waiting and fear behind. Others felt the cold grip of dread. Moving a massive army at night was perilous under the best circumstances. Doing so while within reach of the Persian cavalry, the largest in the ancient world, was madness. Yet the Greeks had no choice. Their thirst, fatigue, and dwindling supplies demanded action. The shadows seemed to swallow the soldiers as formations began to slide quietly backward, each contingent seeking the wells near Plataea. Officers guided their men with light touches on shoulders, hand signals, and clipped commands. A single misstep, a stumble, a panicked shout, could draw the cavalry down upon them. The tension was nearly unbearable. Soldiers moved like ghosts across the unfamiliar terrain, eyes straining to pierce the darkness, every instinct screaming to stay alive. Amid the careful withdrawal, cracks began to appear. Units lost their bearings. Some stumbled toward ruins and shrines they mistook for rally points. Others followed the contingent ahead blindly, unsure if they were heading in the correct direction. The discipline that had held the Greeks against Persian assaults for days began to dissolve, formation by formation, gap by gap. Each city's soldiers acted according to their own survival, trusting or hoping that someone else was managing the bigger picture. On the Spartan right flank, a different kind of tension raged. Amompharetus, a Spartan commander, received the withdrawal order and froze. To him, retreat was not a repositioning, it was betrayal. Every Spartan from his youth had been taught that yielding ground was dishonor. Fight or die on the field, that was the Spartan way. He planted himself firmly, his gaze fixed on the distant hills. To leave now, he believed, would desecrate the memory of Leonidas and all who had fallen at Thermopylae. Pausanias, the regent, approached him personally. The mere fact that the Spartan leader walked through the dark to argue with a subordinate revealed how fragile the army's cohesion had become. Calm but firm, Pausanias explained the reality. The spring was gone, supplies were low, and the army would bleed to death if they stayed. The plan was not surrender but to regroup near Plataea, drink, rest, and then strike back on their own terms. Amompharetus, teeth clenched and pride aflame, refused. He bent down, seized a large stone, and dropped it at Pausanias' feet, a Spartan vote of defiance. For a long, tense moment, the army held its breath. A single officer's stubbornness could have unraveled the entire plan, leaving the army vulnerable to annihilation. Minutes stretched like hours, each second amplifying the danger. Finally, grudgingly, Amompharetus agreed to move. His slow compliance left the Spartan wing dangerously exposed as the rest of the army continued its silent retreat. The night swallowed the Greeks as they withdrew, shadows shifting, soldiers navigating treacherous terrain. Survival was paramount. Glory was a distant thought. They moved toward the wells, toward safety, and toward the moment when vengeance for their fallen king would finally be possible. The first gray light of dawn tore through the night like a blade. The quiet, tense darkness of the Greek withdrawal was gone, replaced by a world exposed, raw, and dangerous. The army that had stood together for days, disciplined and formidable, now existed in scattered fragments. Across the open plain of Plataea, small clusters of soldiers moved toward the wells, toward safety, each contingent following its own path. The neat formations of the previous days had dissolved into disorder. The Persian scouts, crouched on the far side of the river, were the first to spot it. The Greek battle line had vanished. Where there should have been a wall of shields and spears, there were only men stumbling across unfamiliar terrain, some forming ad hoc lines behind broken stone walls, others drifting toward the outskirts of Plataea. Mardonius, commanding from the Persian camp, understood instantly the opportunity that had presented itself. The Greeks were fractured. The moment he had been preparing for had arrived. Cavalry, the hammer of the Persian army, was unleashed. Hooves tore into the soft banks of the Asopus River as riders fanned out, ready to harass and cut off any unit caught in the open. The sound of horses thundered across the plain, mingling with the panic of Greek units still trying to find their bearings. Soldiers pushed forward, weapons ready, confident that the scattered Greeks could be destroyed before they regrouped. Yet even in chaos, the Spartans held a core of resolve. On a small rise near a sanctuary, Pausanias gathered the Spartan and Tegean contingents. The rest of the army had already fractured, leaving these men exposed, yet their shields were ready, spears in hand, eyes fixed on the advancing threat. The choice was stark: flee across open ground and risk annihilation by cavalry, or stand and fight in place, trusting in training, discipline, and sheer courage. Pausanias did not hesitate. The Spartan line locked into position alongside the Tegeans. Shields went down, spear points rose, and every man understood the stakes. There would be no reinforcements. There would be no retreat. Only the unrelenting clash of bronze and blood awaited them. The Persians began with their most deadly weapon, arrows. Skilled archers, long trained and armed with the finest bows, rained shafts upon the Spartans and Tegeans. The sound of wood striking bronze echoed like hammer blows on anvils. Some arrows found their marks, piercing armor and flesh. Men fell, sometimes without even drawing their swords. Blood pooled in the dust, darkening the earth beneath their feet. Pausanias remained calm, moving among his men, steadying those who wavered. The Spartan training, begun when boys were taken from their homes at age 7, now held them fast. Discipline overrode instinct. Panic had no place here, but even he could not act without the gods' approval. Animals were brought forward for sacrifice, entrails inspected by priests, signs read with intense scrutiny. Each unfavorable reading stretched the tension further. Every second the Spartans endured the arrow storm. Every minute the Persian cavalry prowled the open ground, the danger increased. Finally, after several readings, the omens were favorable. The gods said yes. At that instant, the transformation began. The Spartan line surged forward, not in a chaotic rush, but as a precise, mechanical force. Spears thrust, shields locked, and every man moved with lethal intent. The formation became unstoppable. The arrow storm, which had seemed insurmountable, became irrelevant. Bronze met wicker, spears penetrated shields, and the Spartans pressed the attack with terrifying efficiency. The battlefield erupted. Persian infantry and guards tried to resist, but nothing could stop the relentless push. What had begun as a defensive stand now became an overwhelming offensive, fueled by vengeance, honor, and the memory of their fallen king. The moment the Spartans surged forward, the battlefield changed entirely. What had been a slow, deadly arrow storm became a collision of unstoppable bronze and determined flesh. Every step they took crushed the ground beneath them. Every shield slammed forward like the battering ram of an ancient siege engine. They did not run. They did not falter. They moved as one, a living wall of vengeance, driven by months of grief, rage, and the memory of Thermopylae. Persian soldiers tried to hold their ground, raising wicker shields and lifting spears, but the force bearing down upon them was something entirely alien. Shorter spears snapped beneath the unyielding pressure of Spartan long shafts. Lighter shields buckled and fell under the relentless impact of bronze. Men were pressed together in suffocating proximity. The battlefield was no longer a place to maneuver. It had become a funnel, a single, crushing corridor where the Spartans dictated every motion. Amid the chaos, Pausanias moved along the line, eyes scanning for any sign of weakness. The gods had granted permission, but the human element remained. Men were dying. Soldiers who had trained for years were falling under the weight of arrows or the sheer force of the clash. Yet still the Spartans advanced, relentless and precise. Step by step, they ate the distance between themselves and the Persian front line. Each collision shook the earth. Each man they struck fell in a blur of bronze, blood, and dust. In the center, Mardonius, the Persian general, realized the true danger too late. He was a seasoned commander, confident and ruthless, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for the fury of men who fought not only for survival but for vengeance. Mounted on his war horse and surrounded by his personal guard, he rode into the thick of the struggle. His presence was meant to inspire his troops, to stabilize the crumbling front line, but instead, it drew the attention of a man who had nothing left to lose. Arimnestus, a Plataean officer, had already lost everything. His city, his family, his hope. His hands were empty of spear or javelin. The earth beneath him, however, offered a weapon. Stones, the same rocks that generations of Greek farmers had pulled from their fields, became missiles of retribution. With a roar that carried more anger than breath, he hurled a rock directly at Mardonius. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. The stone struck the Persian commander's skull with a sickening crack. His horse reared, and Mardonius fell, motionless. Shock rippled through the Persian ranks faster than any order ever could. Guards froze, soldiers hesitated, some tried to lift him. Most could not comprehend what had happened. Without their leader, the cohesion of the Persian army collapsed like a house of cards. Fear spread like wildfire. Soldiers who had stood firm seconds before now spun around in panic. The retreat became uncontrollable. Units trampled one another, shields and weapons were abandoned, and the Asopus River transformed into a nightmare of drowning and crushed bodies. Men struggled to cross its banks, many dragged down by their own heavy armor, others pressed under the mass of fleeing soldiers. On the rise where Pausanias held his line, the Spartans and Tegeans watched as the front of the Persian army dissolved. What had seemed an insurmountable threat moments before was now unraveling in chaos. The disciplined, terrifying might of Persia, which had marched across Greece with apparent invincibility, was breaking apart under the precise, relentless push of men who refused to surrender. And yet the battle was far from over. Beyond the river, the Persian stockade still held, sheltering thousands of survivors behind wooden walls. The Spartans could not breach it alone. It would take the arrival of the other Greek contingents, the Athenians, the Corinthians, the allies scattered across the plain, to complete the destruction of the Persian forces. The day was not yet won, but the tide had turned. The hammer of Sparta had struck, and the world of ancient Greece would never be the same. The Persian stockade loomed ahead, a wooden fortress cobbled together from the spoils of Greek towns, its gates heavy and unyielding. From a distance, it might have seemed impenetrable, but the Greeks had already turned the tide of the battle. The Spartans, still breathing with the fire of their unstoppable advance, had shattered the central front of the Persian army. What remained inside the stockade were survivors, desperate and disoriented, trapped behind timber walls that offered little real protection. The Athenians arrived first on this flank, weary yet relentless. They had fought their own brutal engagement against the bands and Persian infantry, menacing foes armed with intimate knowledge of the terrain and Greek tactics. But fatigue was no match for resolve. They approached the stockade with axes, improvised rams, and sheer determination. Every step forward carried the memory of burned cities, enslaved families, and desecrated temples. Every swing of their axes was fueled by vengeance and survival. The gates groaned under assault. Timbers splintered and fell, rain of debris and dust mixing with the shouts of men and the screams of defenders. Arrows rained from the walls, cutting into shields and dropping attackers where they stood. But the Athenians pressed forward, gripping their weapons, swinging, hacking, climbing over the fallen. The stockade, meant to shelter and defend, became a trap, its narrow corridors turning into funnels of death. Inside, Persian survivors fought for every inch, wielding anything that could be lifted as a weapon, yet against the tightly packed, coordinated Greek formations, they were overwhelmed. Greek soldiers moved with mechanical precision, slipping through openings, cutting down defenders in clusters. The fighting was close, suffocating. Arms tangled, swords clashed, and shields collided in a rhythm of survival and fury. There was no elegance here, no tactics beyond the simple rules of war. Fight, survive, crush. The memory of Thermopylae and Plataea hung over every strike. Every Greek soldier knew the cost of hesitation. Every blow was a statement. Persia would not walk freely across these lands again. Pausanias and the Spartans pressed along the perimeter, closing any gaps, cutting down anyone who attempted escape. They did not hesitate, but they were precise. Each step forward was measured. Each spear thrust aimed to maintain cohesion and prevent the defenders from forming a counterattack. The Athenians breached the gates and surged into the stockade. Chaos inside became carnage. Narrow alleys became battle zones where dozens fought in the space of a few feet. Persian warriors fell in waves, while Greek hoplites moved like a tide, leaving only death and silence in their wake. By mid-afternoon, the stockade was no longer a fortress, it was a tomb. Survivors tried to flee across the open ground, only to be cut down by arrows or the advancing Spartans and Tegeans. The Persian army had ceased to exist as a fighting force. What had once been thousands of well-trained, fearsome soldiers was now scattered, broken, and dead. The scale of destruction was staggering, even by the standards of ancient warfare. As the dust settled, the Greeks moved among the fallen. The living and the dead were separated, the survivors tending to the wounded, lifting their own fallen comrades for burial. Enemy dead were left where they lay, a grim reminder of the cost of invasion and resistance. The battlefield, once a place of strategic calculation, had become a landscape of human suffering and reckoning. Amid the carnage, a single truth emerged. The Persian ambition to subjugate Greece had been shattered. The god king's army, the pride of Persia, was broken, its commanders dead, its soldiers scattered. The victory was not just tactical, it was existential. For the first time in this campaign, the Greeks could breathe without fear of immediate annihilation. For the first time, they had taken history into their own hands. The morning sun rose over Plataea, painting the battlefield in harsh light that revealed every detail the night had concealed. The earth was soaked with blood, churned into mud where men had fought and died. Bodies lay in tangled heaps, broken shields and shattered spears strewn across the plain. Scavenger birds circled overhead, their cries piercing the eerie silence. Dogs prowled in packs, sniffing and tearing through what remained of the dead. The once pristine plains of Boeotia had been transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror, a landscape written in human suffering. The Greeks walked carefully among the fallen. Every step carried the weight of grief, victory, and exhaustion. Spartans, Athenians, Tegeans, and other allies moved silently, tending to the wounded, lifting the dead, preparing burial mounds. The Spartans marked their own losses with simple heaps of earth, a tradition that spoke more of honor than glory. Other cities did the same, each mound a solemn reminder of what had been sacrificed. Even amidst the blood, there was discipline, ritual, and care, an acknowledgement that the dead deserved dignity, even if the enemy did not. The Persian army, once vast and terrifying, no longer existed. Commanders were dead, including Mardonius, killed not by a sword but by the fist of a desperate man defending his homeland. Survivors fled in disarray, tripping over each other in panic, abandoning weapons, shields, and armor. Tens of thousands had fallen, their dreams of conquest shattered on the mud-soaked plains. The ambition of Xerxes to conquer Greece and impose Persian rule had been decisively defeated. The threat of total subjugation, a nightmare that had haunted every Greek city, was over. For Sparta and its allies, the victory was profound yet bittersweet. Thousands of their own had died. Thermopylae was avenged, but it had come at a tremendous cost. The battlefield itself bore witness to both courage and suffering. Ordinary men, not kings or generals, had made history. Stone by stone, spear by spear, human will had turned the tide. In the dust and blood, the Greeks had proven that no army, however vast, could break disciplined courage and unwavering resolve. Beyond the immediate aftermath, the victory at Plataea shifted the trajectory of the Greek world. Cities could rebuild without fear of Persian administration. Athens, spared from permanent conquest, would go on to develop democracy, philosophy, and art that would influence generations. Sparta would retain its reputation as the ultimate military society, its values cemented in the memory of those who fought and died. The alliance of Greek cities, fragile and temporary, had endured long enough to strike a decisive blow, ensuring the independence of their homeland. Yet the cost of victory lingered. Fields remained scarred, homes destroyed, families decimated. Recovery would take years, even decades. But in the ashes, something greater had been secured: freedom, identity, and the space for a civilization to flourish. The legends of Thermopylae and Plataea would intertwine, not as isolated tales of heroism, but as a continuum of resistance, courage, and justice. The debt owed to fallen kings, warriors, and citizens had been paid. As the sun climbed higher, the Greeks left the battlefield behind, not with triumphal pride but with sober understanding. History had been carved here, not by kings or empires, but by men who refused to surrender to overwhelming force. Every victory comes with a price, but Plataea proved that when courage meets discipline, even the most terrifying of enemies can be broken. The memory of that day, of blood and mud and stone, would echo through generations, a testament to what ordinary men could achieve when faced with extraordinary peril. Plataea was more than a battle. It was a turning point. It was the moment when the impossible became real, when vengeance and honor fused with strategy and courage to forge a future free from the shadow of conquest. In the quiet that followed, as the rivers ran red and the earth soaked in sacrifice, Greece had written its own destiny, and nothing, not even an empire, could undo it. If you enjoy dark, untold history, subscribe because we uncover what others won't.